Of the 14,000 or so German airborne troops engaged in Operation Mercury at Crete in May of 1941, some 5,000 were actually dropped on Crete, with another 750 landed by gliders and another 8,000 landed via airstrips or by ships. The Germans sustained 5,400 casualties, including 3,100 killed in action and 1,600 wounded in action. In addition to airborne troops, some 15,000 troops of the 5th Mountain Division took part in the invasion and capture of Crete. While these casualty rates were very high, lessons were learned from and obvious mistakes made during the parachute drops. Lessons which the Luftwaffe could have been put to good use in an airborne assault on Malta. Axis ultimately fell short of conducting an all-out invasion and occupation of the island during the war. Their failure to eliminate this Allied threat to Axis strategic goals in North Africa and in the Mediterranean theater would continually come back to haunt the Italians and Germans during their struggle with the British and her allies in Egypt. But what if Axis political and military decision makers had decided to invade the island and had launched Operation Hercules in July of 1942? Thanks to good area reconnaissance of Malta during most of 1942, the Axis knew virtually every square inch of the island and disposition of its garrison force, its road networks, topography, fortifications, and artillery battery locations. The German army, the Luftwaffe, the Italian Air Force, and the Italian Navy would utilize all this data into crafting the best possible plan of attack should the operation have been given a go-ahead by all parties concerned. This was in stark contrast to Operation Mercury, the Crete invasion in 1941, where very little to no recon was gathered beforehand and was single-handedly the biggest factor in why Germany had suffered such high casualty rates. The plan called for an initial landing of some 12,000 German and 9,000 Italian airborne troops on the southeast corner of the island, where it would secure a beachhead there, the Famagusta beachhead. Next, the Italian Navy would launch an amphibious phase of the operation, sending one Panzer regiment of captured tanks, as well as a dozen or so Panzer IIIs and IVs to spearhead the advance towards Valletta harbor, along with several battalions of Italian Marines. This would precede the landing of 2 Italian infantry divisions. 4 Italian battleships and 4 heavy cruisers would make up the backbone of the amphibious endeavor, with the battleships dedicated to providing shore bombardment in support of the amphibious operation. The second beachhead would be opened, the Larnaca beach, to the east, where another 2 Italian infantry divisions would be landed. Apparently, Operation Hercules had as part of its plans the feigned landing of the northwesterly portion of the island as a means to throw off the Allied response. The main landing force at Famagusta and Larnaca beachheads was to advance towards Valletta harbor before the British had a chance to organize any sort of defense. It was felt that the 23,000-strong garrison of Malta, already suffering from reduced rations and low morale due to Axis blockade and bombing, wouldn't offer as fierce resistance as would be the case under ordinary circumstances. Well, this was the plan. In reality, the Axis lacked a consistent strategy against Malta. In 1940, the Italian Navy first supported invading Malta and then opposed it. In 1941, Rommel first supported invading Malta and then in 1942 opposed it. And Rommel usually got what he asked for. He was the one on the ground in North Africa. His were the needs that were listened to. Hitler met with Mussolini at Salzburg on the 29th of April 1942 for a conference on Axis war strategy. The problem of what to do about Malta was also discussed, and plans for an invasion that would be codenamed Operation Hercules took shape. Albert Kesselring, the overall German commander in the Mediterranean theater, was put in charge of it. Thus, the decision was finally made to capture Malta in 1942. With the failure of the June convoys to reach Malta, by late June of 1942, Malta was down to half rations that would run out by early September of 1942. So the air offensive of Kesselring had nearly starved Malta out. Yet, in June of 1942, Rommel took Tobruk in a single day. On the 21st of June 1942, Kesselring met with Rommel when Rommel requested permission to invade Egypt after the fall of Tobruk using captured fuel stocks. Kesselring warned Rommel that if Malta was not taken first, there would not be enough aircraft to support Rommel's advance, as it would still be occupied with bombing Malta to ensure his supply line. Rommel argued he had the British on the run and now was the time to finish them off, that no date had yet been set for invading Malta, which was not true as the invasion was planned only 20 days away for the 10th of July 1942. Rommel appealed to Berlin to overrule Kesselring, and finally Hitler supported Rommel. The invasion was called off at the request of the very man who first requested it. By September of 1942, Hitler ended the disagreements between Rommel and Kesselring by promoting Rommel to Field Marshal, that put Rommel outside of Kesselring's command. Even as they argued, Axis shipping losses were 22% that very month of June, proving Kesselring correct. Except for July, losses were 20% or higher, reaching 33% in August and 44% by October of 1942. Kesselring's planes now operated almost exclusively from Sicily, leaving little air support for Rommel in Egypt, exactly as Kesselring warned. The British then hit Rommel at El Alamein in November of 1942, when his supplies were near zero, and this was it. Their continuous failure to eliminate this Allied threat of Axis strategic goals in North Africa and the Mediterranean theater would continuously come back to haunt the Italians and Germans during their struggle with Britain. It is sometimes suggested that the Allies did not need Malta to interdict the Axis supply line to North Africa, and had Malta been taken, they simply wouldn't be attacked the convoys from Egypt. There are numerous flaws with this argument. For example, by July of 1942, British aircraft in Egypt would have had to fly roughly 1,000 miles one way to bomb Tripoli convoys. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you, and see you in the next video.